Ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, the fuzz is here and the big news is in. The big balancing patch has taken place. We got the new heroes, we got all the changes, and man, is it awesome. I took a look at all the stuff that I'm going to talk about, and let's just say, when they said they were going to shake things up a little, they weren't kidding, because the new hero powers are pretty awesome. And the way they changed the aspects around is going to completely shut down some of the older decks, but it's going to give rise to new ones. So first up, the most important change, ladies and gentlemen, the starting life has been increased to 25 from 20. That's a big deal. That means aggression is now less potent because you have the extra life buffer. But at the same time, it'll be a little bit more potent because, as you'll find out, Caclysm has been changed. But I think the 25 life is very interesting. Now, whether or not this is unbalanced or not, it remains to be seen. But I'm optimistic. I'm definitely eager to try out how this new meta is going to develop around the 25 life. On the same note, the life gain win condition has been appropriately raised to 50 from 25. So, I guess. That's really only actually 5 more life than before. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but of course it makes sense to raise it. Because we don't want to make one turn heal more potent, do we? And the third general change is the legend rule has been properly updated now, so that it only considers the person who controls the creature. So you no longer have the stupid case where you can actually have 2 Karthuses because one came from your opponent's deck. Likewise, you will not be able to get a free kill on your opponent's Karthus by stealing his Karthus. No more. Thank goodness, none of that. So first up, let's jump right into the cards. We're going to start with the easy ones. The only change in Rage is this. The Mountain Sanctuary no longer costs red and red. It's now red and generic, which is a change I suggested in one of my videos. It doesn't really make a difference. Totems aren't a thing, so it literally changes nothing right now. But if they ever do come out, it's nice. There's really no reason for it to be too red anyways. This is a little bit more lenient. That's cool, I guess. And then Nature. There was exactly one change in Nature. You want to see it? Neva the Revered's power has been reduced to 1 mana instead of 2. Now that's actually a big deal because it makes the power quite effective. In the past, when it cost 2 mana but gave a discount, you just had to play, let's say, 4 mana worth of creatures from your hand to basically get to draw 2 cards for free. Since you had a discount, the 2 creatures would end up costing you the total of 2 less, the 2 which you spent on Reverence, so you broke even. But now it gets even better. If you have 5 mana and you pay 1 for Reverence, you could easily play 2 or 3 creatures and draw a bunch of cards. So this change is going to invite a controlling nature aspect into the meta, which I think is great, because basically this power never sees any use. It's all about the swift this, swift that. But now I think we're onto something. I'm actually interested in trying this out. And of course, in Trials, this is going to be a much better pick because it's going to be much easier to get a lot of cards out of it. Every 3rd turn, you can easily get 2 or 3 cards with her. And because it is now 1 less mana, if you were going to play this power and 2 3-costing creatures, you'll spend 5 mana instead of them costing 6 mana. So you not only drew cards for free, but you actually got them out cheaper than before. So that's really awesome. I think this is going to make for some interesting new decks. So that's it for Nature. Nature and Rage, almost no changes. Makes sense. They were already fairly well-balanced aspects. So now the next one, we've got Corruption with changes to 4 cards. Oh, let me get out of this. So the 4 cards are, unfortunately, not Sanctum of the Void. Yeah, that's a shame. But I think it's going to be less of a deal. Some of the new hero powers actually spawn additional creatures. So I think Sanctum of the Void is going to be less of a big deal than before. But Still wish it was changed. But anyways, some of the other changes. Let's start with the big one. Insatiable Ghoul is now a 3/4 instead of a 3/3. You cannot imagine how big of a deal this is. This makes Ghoul by far the most efficient creature you can play on turn 3. It's a 3/4, so it beats the Elite Vanguard and it beats everything that came before it. Now, understandably, the ability that it had is kind of negative because it does require you to keep loading up your graveyard. That's why it wasn't played, because it was basically a Vanguard with this annoying little gimmick that sometimes made it not be able to fight on the turn. But now it's a 3/4. So that zombie beatdown deck just got hot. And let me tell you, it's gonna be something. In Trials, this card's gonna be excellent now. I'm gonna have to update my list. Can I make this tier 1? I'm tempted. I mean, 3/4 on turn 3 is really, really powerful. Maybe not tier 1. It'll definitely go up to tier 2 from tier 3, that's for sure. So yeah, that's a big deal. Next up, Midnight Feast was upgraded to cost only 2 mana instead of 3. The card was absolutely garbage up until this point. It's a little better now. For 2 mana, I guess it's alright. Might even be playable if you run zombies. Maybe. It might be playable. I might actually bump it up a tier as well, because going from 3 to 2, that is a big deal. Even if you just put 1 counter on a creature for 2 mana, it's not even that bad. Even though it's still worse than Word of Vigor, but it's at least a consideration now. Next up, we've got, where are you, my friend? Undead Necromancer. Undead Necromancer now has 2 speed instead of 1. That's a big deal. That means it's actually a reasonable creature to play. I mean, it's still not that great, but it's alright. I mean, it's a deadly with 2 speed. It's kind of like a Temptress of Deceit with extra health. That, that zombie beatdown deck I was just talking about, I think this guy might work a lot better now. Because the problem before was a lot of the zombies were just slow. But now that the Ghoul is a lot better, and this guy has 2 speed, Corruption is starting to see some interesting bumps. That's cool, because I like Corruption. Corruption is cool. Let's see more of that. And the last one, the biggest one, I think. Well, actually the second biggest one. You can't compete with the Ghoul. Restless Tombs now costs 3 mana instead of 2. It is legendary now. That means you can only have 1 on the board. That's pretty interesting. Now, also the text has been changed. It says once each turn summon a zombie legionnaire. This, by the way, means that you get a zombie on the turn that you played it. You played, and then you can just use it and get that zombie immediately instead of waiting a turn. That's actually important. That, I think, makes the card a little bit better. The fact that it's legendary is honestly not that big of a deal. Yeah, having 2 or 3 on the board was pretty dumb, and it was pretty powerful because you just had an endless army of zombies. So I think it's a very fair change. Is the card better or worse? I feel like it's just a bit more balanced. Where you play it on 3, you get a zombie right away, so you don't fall as much behind on the board, but you can't have, that many Restless Tombs. So as a result, I'm going to have to, I think I'm actually going to bump it down a tier on the Trials list. Maybe not. The only difference is you don't want to draft like 4 of these anymore, because they'll clog up your hand. Pick up 1 for sure. Second one, why not? But after that, you don't want to get any more. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I'm not going to change it. It's still tier 1. It's still an insane card in Trials. It's just you're not going to pick up like 6 of them anymore. But that's fine. So, good stuff in Corruption. I like the changes. I think it overall makes Corruption more playable, which is cool, because it's been considered to be the weaker one of the weaker aspects, because it was just lacking in some aspects. Like, its hard removal is very weak. Yeah, you've got Consume Spirit, for instance, but that only kills creatures up to a certain point. You don't have a card that just outright gets rid of a threat outside of Infernal Tribute, but that's a very expensive card. So that's cool. I'm expecting to see Corruption out there. By the way, I checked out the hero power for this one. It's awesome. Mono Corruption is coming back. Next up, what do we got? The Dominion. Now, there have been a few changes here, a total of 6, starting with Despina, Insatiable Soul. So the hero power has been reduced by a cost, by 1 mana, and it now is 2. Now that's a pretty big deal. The issue with Despina's basic power was always the fact that it was just too slow. It took too long to get going. The only decks that really made use of it were like controlling decks. Now that it's 1 less mana, you can start abusing her as early as even turn 3, honestly. If you go for 3 mana, 1 aspect, you could play a 1-drop and then reload and play a 3-drop. More realistically, you'll wait till turn 4 or 5 when you have at least 4 mana available. Then you could, for instance, play Shadowstep Assassin and then reload and then play the Thunderstorm Titan. So that's pretty cool. It just makes her a lot more playable in general. I don't know if I'll try it out, but I can tell you that somebody will. And whatever decks were out there currently are going to only be stronger because of this. Because you can now do it a lot sooner and it costs you less, which allows you to make bigger plays sooner. Pretty cool. We're gonna have to see where this falls. Now, as for the other cards, first of all, Cathedral of the Night now costs 3 mana instead of 2. I honestly was hoping they were just gonna make it not give a weakness emblem, but I suppose with 3 mana, it's a little bit more difficult. You can't just go for 2 mana, 2 aspects, and immediately kill an enemy creature. This is more of a later game ability. And I suppose it's fine. I'm glad it got a nerf though. It was kind of annoying. Basically, any Dominion deck would just be running it. Are we going to bump it down a tier? Well, it's up to Lomirin to decide actually, since he controls the Dominion list. Maybe. Nah, probably not. Maybe, okay, maybe it's not tier 1 anymore. Maybe it's tier 1.5. Well, that's still pretty good. The other one, the Metropolis, also was changed. And the change here, not quite what I had in mind, but still important. Sacrifice a level 1 creature and draw a card. Not any creature, only level 1 creature. That actually is a much bigger deal than it seems. Because first of all, this disables the whole shenanigans with occultism, where you could sack a Karthus and then bring it back, or sack a Succubus and bring it back. Now you can only do it with small creatures, like with soldiers, with zombies, and that's fine. I think that's a good change. You know, realistically, why should you want to sacrifice a level 2 or 3 creature, you know, unless you are going to abuse occultism? Now you can't. I think this is a very fair change, considering that it costs 0 mana and has basically no cooldown. It's just an easy card draw. And now it's no longer limitless. Now there's actually some kind of restriction on it. And that's pretty cool. It's going to be a little bit worse in Trials. I don't know. I mean, generally you were only stacking small stuff anyways to accelerate your draw, if anything. Maybe slightly worse, but not much. So that was 3 of the 6 things. Now you probably are thinking, what about Karthus and Caclysm? Well, Karthus and Caclysm are on the list, but before we get to them, Vampirism. Surprising, right? I didn't think this card needed a change, but it got one. So the change here is, at the start of your turn, you lose 3 life. What was it before? It was lose 1 life for each creature you control. I think the reason this was done is because oftentimes you'd have no creatures at all, or just 1 creature, and then the power boost was just way too good. This was particularly notorious with the Lamps of Zephyr, as you could have several lamps on the board and lose no life because you don't control creatures, but your lamps get powered up. Now you do lose life, which means you actually have to attack your opponent, because 3 life every turn, that's going to start adding up. So, it's a fair change, actually. I honestly didn't mind this card over much, but I don't disagree with the change. Not at all, so yeah, that's fine. I don't think it changes it much for Trials. Cataclysm now costs 6 mana. Wow. I mean, 6 mana, that's quite a lot. That is quite a lot of mana. I would have been happy if they made it 5. But now that it's 6, so first of all, this means that if you're going aggro, you don't have to fear this card anymore, because it takes a lot longer for it to come out now. So you have more time to beat your opponent's face. That's pretty cool. But maybe what they're trying to do is make this card more appealing to the new basic Despina that can, you know, bump up her power. Or basically just encourage you to go more heavily into mana so you have quicker access to this card. And so that you don't have people just, you know, ramping to double Dominion and just Cataclysm all day, every day. Is 6 mana excessive? I don't know. Maybe slightly, but I don't mind. I was never a big fan of this card. But I think we've reached a fine compromise where between the extra life, you know, 25 instead of 20, and a more expensive Cataclysm, Rage and aggro in general can still function just fine. But Cataclysm is still in the game for control decks to use. So I actually think this is fine. 6 mana, that makes it, by the way, the first 6 mana card in the game, actually. But it's one of the most powerful effects in the game, so you know what? That's fair. And now Karthus. Lord Karthus, the Game Breaker. So the only difference here is he still destroys a creature when he comes in. That sucks. But whenever Lord Karthus destroys a creature, you gain 2 life. So the entire life gain engine of Karthus has been completely shut down. Is it still doing this? My apologies. I should have expected that. So the life engine is shut down completely. You no longer you're gonna play Karthus Cataclysm, gain like 20 life. In fact, the whole gaining life thing is basically non-existent. Okay, you get the 2 life maybe from the one thing he kills when he comes in, but other than that, he actually has to fight. So you can't just drop him on the back on your support line and then just wait for the life to roll in. That's good. That is going to make Karthus easier to deal with, since it basically just restricts him to creature removal. He's still a pretty good card, but not as ridiculous as before. You know, it's a nerf. I'll take it. I'm glad at least one of the 2 aspects of him were dealt with, so he isn't as ridiculous. I still don't like the whole enter the field, destroy a creature, but I'm willing to live with this new version. It's better to have than the previous one. So, we're gonna have to see how the decks change, because he's no longer, I don't know, is he still gonna be run? I think you could still run him just because you remove creatures right away, and that's great. But with the change to sell into slavery, also, you can't abuse him as easily anymore. So it seems that devs want to keep Karthus as the, you know, top tier, destroy whatever he wants, answer to whatever legendary, sort of maybe as a means to keep the game in check, so that if there's ever a creature too powerful, there's always an answer. But that's it. Karthus is no longer going to be this win condition when you play him and you just start racking up life and the opposing deck just can't do anything. So that's cool. I'll take it. I will take it and run. Alright, now the 2 big aspects that got changed. Order and Wisdom. Let's kick it off with Wisdom. A total of 9 changes in this one. Quite a few. First of all, Thaumic Laboratory. Mana cost went from 3 to 2. That's pretty cool. This card wasn't seeing enough play, only in some fringe Chalice decks or something. Now it's a little bit better. 2 energy for 2 mana seems pretty fair to me. It is now at least competitive with Force Wielder. So at the moment, energy decks are still not a thing, but if they ever do become a thing, this card will see play. That's pretty cool. I like this. Charged Aurite no longer starts with energy. That actually is a bigger deal than it seems, because you can no longer play Aurite and then play the Foundry Engineer and immediately have a Golem available. This also means that if you play Aurite turn 1, you'll only give the Golem Engineer 2 more energy instead of 3, so he'll only spawn 1 more Golem. It's pretty fair. It's still a good card for energy decks, but it's just less explosive. You know, you no longer gonna have the case where you drop 1 down, maybe you drop 2 of them, and then you already have 4 energy by the next turn, and your Foundry Engineer starts spawning golems all day. Okay, basically what I'm saying is this is a good change. What was the next one? Contraptionist. Big changes on this bad boy. He's actually level 1 now, so it's a 2-drop. Wait, so it was buffed? Oh, wait a minute. When Contraptionist enters the field, search your deck for level 1 non-creature artifact and put it into your hand. Ah, so he no longer puts the artifact on the battlefield, he adds it into your hand instead. That's a big deal. Now let's face it, there were only ever 2 artifacts that were ever played with him. 3 if you count my Demonologist deck. the Obelisk of Unity, and of course, the Metabolic Overcharger. The whole idea was, you play him, you get the Obelisk, you get a card, you start ramping right away. Or play him, get the Overcharger on something, and just start swinging large damage right away. Both of those things are now gone. That's probably fine. The fact that he's cheaper is actually, that's fair. It gives blue another 2-drop, although not really a desirable one, but still. I mean, you gotta think of it this way. Sooner or later, the devs are gonna add more cards, and some of those cards are gonna be level 1 non-creature artifacts, which is just gonna make Contraptionist better. So this card is gonna be in the meta no matter what, because he'll always have good targets. We just need more of them now. But hey, does this mean that the Wisdom Dominion ramp is gonna die? Well, you're gonna have to wait till the change to Obelisk to find that out. Hint, yes. So, fair change. I don't think it's too bad. I'm gonna miss my Overcharger shenanigans, because that's the very first deck I ever played in a tournament here. That's okay. I bid you adieu, Contraptionist. Next up, Force Wielder also has been made a 1 level 2 mana card. Used to be 2 blue, which kind of sucked. It made it difficult to play. Now it's much easier to play. But here is the caveat. You can only pay up to 4 mana, and then an allied card gains that much energy instead of any amount, which is an excellent change. First of all, being able to play it earlier and being able to splash it more is good. And the fact that you can't abuse it ridiculously makes the card more balanced in every aspect, which is awesome. Since it's only 1 blue and not 2, you don't have to only play it in specific decks. You can now play it in more decks. And the fact that it's only 4 mana and not any number means that in those decks where you do play it, it's not going to be as ridiculous. One of the very first combos I ever saw with this game was Force Wielder Foundry Engineers, because that was my starter deck. I mean, you play them and then what? I can just every turn spam God knows how many golems. Now it's just 2 golems. Now that's still pretty powerful, but not ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? It's fine. It's a good change. Good job, devs. I really like this change. Next up, whoa. Hang on, that was too quick. Oh, no power engineer. Now the destroy artifact and spell and then gain the energy is now optional. So you can still destroy a spell or artifact, but you don't have to give energy to something. Yeah, I guess. Might as well. I mean, the only time that was ever a problem was with Dark Portal, because you don't want to make Dark Portal gain energy in general. So that's fine. That just makes the card more easier to deal with. Astral Dive. Now this is a biggie. It went from 1 mana to 3 mana. Wow. That's actually very interesting. It's like they are preemptively dealing with this sleeper card. Why was it a sleeper card? Because it was a draw 1 card for 1 mana. It was an easy cycle with an upside. Now it's no longer an easy cycle. Now it costs 3 mana. So what's the effect? Up to 2 cards you control gain 2 energy. Is that better than all of your cards gain 1 energy? And the answer is yes. Because you rarely end up with a lot of energy cards on the board. So giving 2 of them 2, that's pretty good. Power up your force field, power up your, foundry engineer, get an extra golem right away. Now it still costs 3 mana. So it's really only ever gonna see play if the energy deck becomes a thing, and maybe not 4 of a kind. Maybe it will be 4 of a kind. I don't know. Definitely in trials it's gonna be kind of bad, because you can't just pick it up and use it as a cycle anymore. You have to actually have appropriate cards, and that's harder to do there. I don't know. How do I feel about this change? I guess it's fine. I guess because I was worried about this card being a sleeper, they dealt with it right away before it ever became an issue. So I'm going to give developers props for spotting it right away. Great job, guys. Card's fair. I don't think there's a problem with it. We're, of course, going to have to wait for more energy stuff before the energy thing can take off, but it'll happen eventually. Moving on. I wish there was like a slider here. Here we go. Jorale Silencer. now has 5 energy instead of 6. Okay, that's fair. That's something that's been talked about. It's going to be a little bit easier to deal with. Is it going to see play? I don't know. Most decks where it saw play was in control decks, where you use it to basically buy yourself an extra turn. And Wisdom Dominion also ran it quite a bit, just to slow down the opponent. But in that case, it often wasn't that big of a deal because Despina could just steal the Gnome Power Engineer and blow it up. But I think they made this change to make it easier for other decks to deal with it, so that, you know, you only lose 1 more mana than your opponent did. So, yeah, that's fine. That's a fine change. Alright then, and there's only 2 more things. Forcefield is now uncommon instead of rare. I personally don't care one way or the other. I'm completely indifferent towards this change. I suppose it's fine. And then, of course, the one you've been waiting for, the Obelisk of Unity. It is now legendary! Yay! Alright. Our dreams have finally come true. Well, for the most part. I was kind of hoping this would be made a colorless card, but that's not a thing in the game yet. I suppose if it ever becomes a thing, there you go. That'll be an option. But yeah, since this is legendary, you can no longer have like 3 of these on the board, or 4, and combined with the Contraptionist nerf / buff. Yeah, these decks are gonna have to change up their game. Yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun. That's gonna be a lot of fun to see just how it's gonna happen. Now, first of all, is this even gonna be played? Well, you can still search it with Contraptionist, but because you only have 1, you'd only really use it if you needed to, you know, maybe run 3 colors instead of 2. Basically, what I'm saying is it's probably not gonna see play, because the whole point of Obelisk was you get it out cheaply through Contraptionist, you get out more of them, you draw extra cards through it, and then you can, you know, manipulate your aspects to play Word of Grace, Word of whatever, or whatever you wanted. It gave you all the options. With only 1, your options are severely limited, and you can only ever get the 1 card draw. So definitely, if there's going to be a control meta, it's going to be different. It's not going to rely on the Obelisk anymore, thank goodness. And as a result, I just don't think this card's going to see much play. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. Really not a lot. At least until it becomes colorless. In that case, maybe. Because it would be kind of universal. You know, it would be a good card to have, but since it's legendary, you could just throw it in if you want to splash. If not, no problem. Yeah, I like this. And of course, Order. We're going to leave this for last because there's some big changes here. So, Angelica now costs 6 mana instead of 5. I guess that's cool. It means the Angel victory is going to be a little bit slower. That's fine. I have no problem with that. I was not a big fan of the Angels. Or at least not really winning that way. Nah, maybe it's okay if the Angels weren't as stalling as before. So basically, because it costs 6, it's going to take longer to set up. That's perfectly fair. Where was this card? Oh yeah, Dwarf Musketeer is now ranged permanently. As in, you don't have to pay 1 mana. That's a big deal. That actually improves this card significantly, because it means it is now an efficient counter to goblins, or even zombies. It's a great card right now. 2-1 with ranged is pretty strong. For just 2 mana, it's going to see a lot of play in Order decks. I think I'm going to have to put it into my Soldier deck, because it looks like a really good card now. This card used to be called... what was it called? Rally the Militia or something. Basically, this card has been seriously buffed. First of all, it is now an instant. Why does that matter? Because in addition to summoning 2 militias, allied militia creatures have 3 speed until end of turn. That, by the way, includes the 2 that you summon. So, 3 speed militias, hey, that's actually pretty decent, right? So that's actually a really good card. Because it's instant, you can use them to manipulate the outcome of battle in a very interesting way. And it makes just all militias a lot better, because if you have a bunch of slow militias, and then your opponent thinks, I'm just gonna ignore them, they all of a sudden have 3 speed. Yeah, this card looks pretty good. I think it's gonna see play, because going from not instant to instant, that's pretty good. And the 3 speed thing is really interesting, because it means basically on your opponent's turn, you summon 2 1/1s with 3 speed. That's actually pretty nice. You could easily use that to get some good blocks and save your creatures. Really good card, I think. I think it's gonna be great. Man, some love for the soldiers. I'm loving it, and they're loving it. Okay, enough of that. Next up, Word of Grace. Actually, no change, but that's not a problem, because since Obelisk of Unity is not, you know, it's legendary now, it's not going to be abused anymore, at least not as much. Griffin Rider is now a knight. Okay, I guess. It doesn't make any difference, but in the future, if knights get more support, now Griffin Rider will be a part of it. Alright, that's cool. What else do we have? We have 2 more important changes. Protector of the Innocent has lost her Vigilance ability, so it no longer gets the 2 extra speed on your opponent's turn. So it's just a 4/4 with 2 speed for, you know, 4 mana, 2 aspects. So it's a okay card, but that's it. Is it still good enough for the Angels? Well, they don't have a choice. They have to run it. I think this was done to reduce the stally nature of the Angels, because since she had 4 speed on your opponent's turn, it was very hard to ever attack, because she could block everything and kill most anything. Now, well, she's just a decent blocker. I'm actually quite surprised that this card got a nerf, but you know what? I don't have a problem with that. And now the big one. Guardian of the Faithful. So the new ability is the following. When an attack is declared against you, if 3 or more creatures are attacking, sack the Guardian and destroy all those creatures. So it's like it's simultaneously a buff and a debuff at the same time. So what do I mean? The Guardian is now, again, capable of destroying any number of attacking creatures instead of just 3. However, this only works if at least 3 creatures are attacking. That means it is now possible to bypass the effect. That is a big deal. So you could say it's basically a nerf, because it is no longer the ultimate defense against boards. It now actually can be dealt with just by attacking with 2 creatures. So that's good. That's pretty fair. Now, the fact that she can destroy more than 3, I'm going to call it a very slight debuff, but a very fair one that makes the card less stally, just like the other Angel. So that's good. I like the change. They still think it's a ridiculously strong card, but a little bit less so. Alright, I'll take it. So that is it. Actually, wait, no. As one more card I forgot. A Ray of Righteousness has been changed. It can now destroy any creature with 3 attack or more. Before that, it was a non-order creature. So it was kind of an annoying restriction where you couldn't deal with enemy angels. That was just kind of... It was an unnecessary restriction. Now it can... I mean, there aren't that many things that it's going to kill in addition, but it's nice to have. Now it's actually just good removal to have. And there is one last thing. The hero power is now 1 mana instead of 2. Okay, I actually like that. I think for 1 mana, this hero power is pretty fair. Now, admittedly, this does make the actual militia card, like, completely hopelessly useless. But if I'm being honest, that card doesn't even need to exist. It might as well just be a token. But no one's going to miss militia. So yeah, I think that's good. That it's going to make the ability a lot more spammable. It's basically going to be used every turn. Because for 1 mana, it's like you get to play a militia for free. Well, you know, without spending a card. So that's fair. I think that's pretty good. So that concludes all the card changes and hero changes. What do I think? I am very impressed. The developers definitely decided to take a broad approach and made sweeping changes, which are completely going to shake up the meta. Even without the new heroes, there's already going to be different decks. But now, wait a minute, we have something special for you. Let's look at the new heroes, because this is possibly what you came here for, right? Well, here we go. First up, Hermelion, the Hand of Justice. I'm not gonna go into the lore on these guys, partly because I didn't really read it, and secondly because I don't really care, but I will link it in the description if you want to read up about them. But now let's get down to business. Tireless March, 2 aspects, 3 mana, ready all allied creatures, and heal all damage, and go to your deploy phase. Now what the hell does that even mean? What this means is, okay, the deploy phase is main phase 1. So imagine this, you have your turn, you attack, do your trades, do whatever. Then you activate this ability. All your creatures are now unexhausted and fully healed, and can go ahead and attack a second time, or not at all, and stay for defense. So that's a very powerful ability, actually. You could say it's win more, but it's super win more, because if you have any kind of a decent board, you can make that decent board very strong indeed by not just either removing a lot of opponent's creatures or setting up just a devastating attack for massive amounts of damage. I mean, if you can combine this with Master Tactician, my goodness, it could just be game over on the spot. So it's very, very strong. Very, very strong indeed. How good is it? It's good enough to basically build a deck around. That's all you need to know. I'm most definitely gonna do a deck on this. In fact, I'm gonna do a new OP on every single one of these heroes. You can be sure of that. Now in Trials, this is gonna be pretty good too, but a little bit less good than in Constructed, because you don't necessarily have the option to make the deck you want, but it's still gonna have some use. You're just gonna have to wait a little bit to set up the kind of board where you can get maximum value out of it. In that case, it'll be good, but if you're up against somebody whose hero power gives them repeated values, like Darius with the extra card draw, or some of these other guys, which you'll see would spawn their own creatures, you could be in trouble, because it's obviously useless ability on an empty board. You need to have some kind of a presence to really make use of it, but when you do, it's gonna hurt. So I think this ability is awesome. Next up, Elric the Twin Blade. So what does this do? Well, you see this Illusion Twin, you summon this thing, and its HP, its attack, and speed are equal to the largest of those values among the creatures you control. So if you have a creature with 4 speed, a creature that has 4 attack, and some creature that has 5 health, this will be 4 or 5 with 4 speed. Well, that sounds really powerful, but there is a problem. Whenever this creature is dealt damage... Oh, I thought I was gonna zoom in. Whatever. Whenever that Djinn creature is dealt damage, it is immediately destroyed. That kind of sucks, actually. That means it's only got 1 health effectively. So it's actually not that good, even. I mean, I like the idea of summoning creatures, but you're basically summoning a 1 health creature, and it doesn't have a Swift or anything. So, yeah, I'm not too excited about this one. I think it's one of the... I think this is the only one that I think just isn't that great. Unless I'm missing something, but no, I don't think this is gonna see that much play outside of just, you know, people playing it because it's new. There may be some way to abuse it, but because of the health thing where you get destroyed immediately, I mean, how much damage can this thing do? Yeah, you could put it on the board. If you have a creature with big attack, you're gonna get another creature with big attack, and that's awesome, but it's just an easy target. And because the cooldown is 3, where some of the other guys have cooldown of 2, these Djinns are just not really giving you that much. Now, that said, it's still gonna be something your opponent has to deal with. You know, if he has to send the fireball at it, then he has to send the fireball. You could put it on the support row. If you get a creature with enough speed, maybe you don't even have to. So it's an alright ability, but it seems to be a little bit limited. In Trials, it looks to be a low priority pick, definitely compared to some of the other ones. No, there we go. Next up, Kainu, Edge of the Spear. Play a creature with cost 3 or less from your hand under him without paying its cost. At the start of your next turn, put it on the field with a might emblem on it. So, first of all, you can only play a creature that you satisfy the aspects of. So you can't play like a Bloodwell Matriarch without having purple. Makes sense. It will be kind of ridiculously overpowered otherwise. As it is, you're basically playing a creature for 2 mana, and then it comes a turn late, but gets an emblem on it. That's pretty cool. What are good 3-drops you could play for 2? Well, there is the 2/2 Flying Elf. It's not amazing, but if it's a 3/3 flyer all of a sudden, that's actually not too bad. Also, the 2/1 Swift guy, the Ambusher, becomes a 3/2 with Swift and ranged. That's pretty good. So basically, you're kind of delaying your creatures a little bit, but also powering them up at the same time. Now, you don't have to necessarily play nature. You could play something like a Library Guard, and then it'll come out as a 3/4. That's pretty cool. Really, anything for 3 or less, as long as you have the right aspects. And then you get to get a free Might emblem on it, which is pretty nice. You know, more powerful creatures will trade better, and it'll give you better board control. So it's a pretty interesting ability. Although 3 or less, you're gonna have to kind of outsource for other aspects, because outside of the Swift guy, you know, the Elf, okay, is something, but not that great. You don't really have that many great cards. You could, of course, just play a 2-drop and get the Might emblem, even if it's a bit slow. But ideally, you want to use it with a cost 3 to get maximum value, in which case it would be pretty good. In Trials, it's a little bit worse because you kind of have to build around this ability to get the right kind of costed creatures. If you don't get them, it's not going to be too great. It's not bad, but it's just not that great. Basically, it's a Might emblem every other turn with a delay on the board. The important thing is that the creature that comes in the next turn doesn't come in with Swift, unlike, say, Path of Transcendence. So you are effectively slowing down that creature by a turn. It is basically Path to Transcendence, but without the risk of being destroyed. It's still a fine ability. It still should be fun to play around with, but it does require a specific build to be effective. We'll have to see just how good it is. But yeah, in Trials, not the greatest. Burke, the Uncontainable. Wow, 4 mana cooldown. Did I say 4 mana? I meant 4 turn, of course. So the ability must be insane. Well, Burke deals 2 damage to each of up to 2 enemy creatures on the front line, and they deal damage equal to their attack to Burke. So it's basically removal. Removal of up to 2 things, and then he has to take the damage. Pretty interesting. It costs 3 mana, but, I mean, it's basically equivalent to like a mini Fire Blast. Kind of. It's just extra removal, and it's certainly not bad. It is, honestly, a reasonable answer to aggro, but it's also good if you are aggro, if you need to get rid of several things right away instead of attacking your opponent. You always have access to something that you can use to damage your opponent's creatures. So that's pretty good. Now, he does take damage. That's important to know, so you can't just be hitting things willy-nilly, since, well, you're going to take a lot of damage. And also only hits the front line, so you can't hit the support. It would be insane if it could hit the support line. Looks pretty good. Could you use that instead of the Zash's deal 3 damage to everything? Yeah, it's kind of a similar function, but you don't hit your own creatures. So you basically would want to use it once you've mostly exhausted your hand and you're looking to control the board. So the ability is strong for sure. It'll see play in some way or another. In Trials, this should be pretty decent as well, because it's just extra removal, and removal is always good to have there, even if you are taking the damage. Looks pretty good. We've got 2 more. Coronis, the Blood Reaper. Oh, it summons a Raven. Oh, that's pretty awesome. So yeah, you see this Soul Raven? It's a 0/1 flying lifebound. You pay 2 life to summon it, and then at the end of your turn, if the enemy hero was dealt damage this turn, you put a Might emblem on all of your Soul Ravens. That's pretty cool, and it has a cooldown of 2, so you can have a lot of Soul Ravens actually, and you can power them all up quickly. So this ability looks pretty cool. You're summoning a creature. I mean, presumably you're going to summon it the turn you're going to deal damage to your opponent. Most likely. So you get at least a 1-2 Raven. But then this Raven can just pick your opponent for extra damage. And then keep growing more powerful. And the fact that you can get it on the board every other turn? That's really good. I mean, you could just do that. Get a Raven, get a Raven, get a Raven. And the Ravens will get progressively bigger. So there's a lot of value to be had in this hero power. I think it's quite strong. Obviously more suited for control. But even mid-range could make some use of it just to get an extra Raven. Yeah, the ability looks really good. And for the record, it says at the end of turn, not at the end of enemy turn. So you can actually get 2 counters if you do damage to your opponent on his turn with a fireball or something. Not that likely, but it's something to keep in mind. Or if you have a Disciple of Zash even, you could just poke your opponent at the end of his turn. That gets a counter. Then during your turn, just do normal damage. Then it gets another counter. I really like this ability. I really like it. In Trials, this ability is going to be very strong indeed, because just constantly summoning Ravens means you always have options. I mean, if you can just summon it as a chump block, if nothing else. So yeah, that's pretty good. And now, I think my favorite, Enoch the Steel Horror. 2 aspects, 2 mana, sacrifice a creature, and then other creatures you control get +1 attack until end of turn, and you gain 1 life for each creature you control. My goodness! So first of all, this ability is going to be absolutely insane with Flesh Sculptor, because as I experimented, if you have a Flesh Sculptor, you sack the creature, the zombie is spawned, that zombie gets an attack boost, and you get the life for that zombie. So you get that extra little bonus. So why is this really strong? Because sacrificing a creature is not a big deal. You have lots of zombies at your disposal. And then power up the rest of your board and get a bunch of life. My goodness. This is going to make the zombie beatdown deck really, really, really strong. I can just see it right now. This deck is going to build itself. It really builds itself. Put in a bunch of zombies, put in this ability, and just go to town. The Infected Survivor is going to be even better than it was before, since you can sack it, and then you still get another zombie afterwards. The cooldown of just 2 means it's very easy to set up a really devastating attack. Very similar to the Tireless March, but it also gives you a lot of life. And it has a lower mana cost. You have to sack a creature, but that's not a problem for Corruption. So yeah, that's really good. This is going to be quite a deck to play. In Trials, it should be very strong for the same reason. You generally get a lot of zombies, a lot of creatures. And, you know, it acts as a source of life and a power boost on the board. But just like the Tireless March, you have to keep in mind that if you don't have a board already, it's kind of crappy since you have nothing to power up. It's insane when you're at least even on the board, you know, completely game winning if you're ahead, but it sucks if you're behind, so you have to keep that in mind when you are drafting. If you pick this guy, you are drafting aggressively, just like with the Tireless March with the Order hero. So yeah, really great stuff. So that concludes my video on the new patch. I am very excited. Our devs went really far and beyond to make it something. I mean, it feels like an expansion, even though no new creatures were added. Just the changes they made, it feels like we've just experienced an expansion pack. Oh, also, by the way, if you guys are interested, the crafting has been cut in half. I forgot to mention this earlier. Like, this costs 75 shrines to make right now. So if you have a lot of extra shrines kicking around and you don't want to buy packs, take this time as an opportunity to make these heroes while they're cheap and fill up your collection at half price. You won't get another chance. Well, you probably will eventually, but get it while it's hot. So thank you guys for watching. I know it was a long video, but there was a lot to cover. And man, what a patch. What a patch indeed. So I'm going to stop talking right now. I'm going to get started on the new OP decks right away. It's going to be fun. Well, again, the blue one's slightly disappointing, but who knows? Maybe there's some hidden combo that I just overlooked. If there is, oh man, I can't wait to use it. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. get those new heroes, start rolling those new decks, and I will see you out there